Z-Scan. The Z-Pass is controlled and communicated with the computer via the zPort software, which has a simple and intuitive interface. Starting the gauge. Connect the gauge to a computer using a mini USB cable. Run the zPort software. When you connect the gauge, the software installs it automatically. After connecting the gauge, information about it and the ability to set the program will appear. Indicate the program according to the geophysical survey plan. Specify the time intervals and frequency of recording. In order to add an additional line, you need to right-click. After adding an interval, you need to set the necessary parameters for it. The program can contain 16 entires in total. Load the program into a gauge by pressing the Start button. Don't worry when a warning message appears that all data memory will be erased. If you select Yes, the software will erase all memory and rewrite gauge's program. If no, then the data will be available for reading. This is a precaution to avoid accidentally erasing survey results. Click Yes. The gauge is started after the memory clearing process. You can visually check the startup of the gauge by changing the color of the status line in the program table from blue to green and changing the status text from Ready to Run status. After starting the gauge, disconnect the gauge from the computer. Make sure the gauge is up and running. After starting, the gauge should work in autonomy mode for 3 to 5 minutes. After this time, it is necessary to check its status by connecting the gauge to the computer. If the status of the gauge is Work and is highlighted in green, then the gauge is ready to run into the well. If the status of the gauge is Ready and is highlighted in blue, then it is necessary to check the battery because the gauge has dual power supply and when connected to a computer, switches to power supply from USB. Then restart it. At the end of the program, the gauge stops working. Also, the work stops when the memory is full or the battery is low. The required amount of energy and amount of memory to carry out. The given sequence diagram is displayed in the software. It should also be kept in mind that the actual capacity of battery depends on the temperature, storage condition, the passivation parameters and the date of release of this battery. Data reading. Connect the gauge to your computer and launch the zPort software. Start reading data by clicking the Read Data button. Select a folder and the data reading process will begin. At the end of the reading, the software will open a data view window in the form of a graph. Check if the data is correct. The graph can be zoomed in by holding down the left mouse button and highlighting the required area. To return the chart to its original state, press the right mouse button. Data can be converted and saved in LAS format. To do this, select File, Save as LAS file. Important: the gauge's record stops automatically when reading data. The work on the program stops, the gauge status changes to Ready status. How to schedule recording frequency and study duration depending on available batteries. For autonomous power supply of the gauge, lithium thionyl chloride current sources are used with a rate operating voltage of 3.6 volt. The standard size of AA batteries are used: 14,505, 17,505, 18,505. The required amount of battery capacity and the amount of memory required to perform a given cycle is displayed on the software panel. If we change the number of days of research and the frequency of recording, we will see how these parameters change. Then we can see the required battery capacity and how long the gauge memory will last. Additionally, there is a table of the maximum battery life of the gauge for several types of batteries. This table is compiled according to the manufacturer's data, where the battery capacity and consumption of the gauge are given for room temperature. It is important to note that the actual capacity of battery depends on the operating temperature, storage conditions, the passivation parameters, and the data of manufacturer of the given battery, which could differ from what is specified. For guaranteed operation of the gauge, timely replacement of the batteries is required. A specific battery model should be chosen considering the temperature in the well and the program of the survey. Let's look at a specific example. If we take the SI560S battery with a capacity of 1700 mAh and set the recording frequency to 1 second, then the battery capacity will be enough for 13 days. If you also take this battery, but set the recording frequency to 10 seconds, then the capacity will be enough for 77 days. If you take an ER18505 battery with capacity of 4000 mAh and set the recording frequency to 10 seconds, then the capacity will be enough for 181 days. The values are highlighted in color when the measurement stops due to the gauge memory overflow. Thank you for watching. You can find more details on our website zscan.com.